Do you feel like AI is transforming your role so rapidly that you can't keep up, that you might even be replaced by a machine? Well, fear no more. In today's episode, we've got the solutions for you. Welcome to the Super Data Science Podcast. I'm your host, John Krohn. Today, I'm joined by Sheamus McGovern, CEO of Open Data Science, the company behind the Open Data Science Conferences, ODSC, which are my absolute favorite conferences in our field. In today's episode, Sheamus provides his frameworks for rewiring your skill sets so that you thrive professionally in the AI era. Enjoy. This episode of Super Data Science is made possible by AWS, Anthropic, Dell, Intel, and Gurobi. Sheamus, welcome to the Super Data Science Podcast. I'm delighted to have you on the show. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Cambridge, Massachusetts, right across the street from MIT at the Cambridge Innovation Center, actually.
There you go. Nice plug. Is that a nice place to work?
That's great. A lot of startups here. Good spot right in the heart of Kendall Square. So they call it the Tech Square. So it's a good spot.
Nice. Well, so Sheamus, you are perhaps most famous. You've done a lot of entrepreneurial things in the data science space, but you're perhaps most famous as the creator of the Open Data Science Conference, ODSC. It's been around for 10 years, and I've known you from ODSC conferences since about 2018, 2019, whenever there was one ODSC New York, and I had the most amazing experience. It was really a life-changing experience to be able to have that, because my book, I had just written my first book, Deep Learning Illustrated, but it hadn't been published yet. You invited me, you set aside the biggest room for me. I was sure it was a mistake, but somehow it wasn't. And to have a room at such a premier conference packed like that, it was seriously a life-changing experience for me. Near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, so happy to hear you say that, John, because you've been such a great instructor and speaker at ODSC. So I'm delighted to be in this show and to be a guest.
And it's crazy, actually, with how long we've known each other and how many times we have crossed paths in person at ODSC East in Boston. I'm there pretty much every spring when you do those.
That's right.
At ODSC West in San Francisco, when you do those pretty much you do them every autumn. And I'm pretty much always
at
there.
Halloween, yeah.
On Halloween, you have a big party Halloween night.
That's right.
People get dressed up, and you always hand out a ton of drink tickets.
That's right, our favorite part. It's usually the last day, usually falls on Halloween Eve, so it works quite nicely.
Nice. And Sheamus, with the conference having been around for 10 years, how did you first have the idea to create this conference? What's the origin story for it, and how did it grow into the biggest, best data science conference in the world?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the kind words, John. Couldn't have put it better myself. Yeah, like a lot of things, there's a bit of a convoluted path, right? So I started my career in finance here in Boston. Was working with a pretty cool company at the time, still around, Fidelity Investments. And I was actually kind of like you got a bit of a background in quantitative finance. So initially I was working on their trading floor, on their algo trading floor. And that was pretty fascinating to me, like not just using code, but also using algorithms to trade stocks and bonds and build risk management systems. And from there, I went on to work in the hedge fund industry. And that was a lot of fun. We worked in Boston, a little bit in New York, London. And from that, I decided to break out into startups, because in hedge funds, we just started to use NLP there in around 2009, 2010. And did a couple of startups that didn't do great, but I established a great team there. And in that startup, we were modeling various financial assets. We were using NLP to scrape the news and interpret the news. And I put together a really small core team of engineers. I decided to start a consulting firm, and then the consulting firm was a lot of fun. Worked for a lot more financial companies, healthcare, fintech, advertising, you name it. And, we started to do kind of like data engineering, but we build mobile apps, web apps. And as I was trying to figure out how do I incorporate data, more data, not just big data, but data and data science into an NLP, I started going to these things called meetups, right? So remember back in 2011 and 12, meetups were huge.
They were the best.
Yeah, they were the best. And it was such a phenomenal thing. you would go to conferences and you paid a lot of money and you'd hear basically a product pitch. Won't name those conferences. And then I go to a meetup and I'm like, this is the best talk I've ever heard. And not only did I hear the talk for free, but I got a slice of pizza and a beer in my hand also. So I started a Boston data science meetup. And at the time, it was a very collaborative scene. There was Predictive Analytics Boston, Boston Data Science was us, at least three or four, and maybe if you total them all up with programming and big data, 7 or 8 meetups in Boston, and we're all having meetups and they're all packed every night. And from that grew out the Boston Data Festival. And our first ticket was $20. I think this is back in 2013, $20. It was only in the evening and weekends, and we did workshops, talks, and everything. We had a Microsoft Nerd Center across the street here. We had a Cambridge Innovation Center as well. And after a couple of years, because I was having my consulting firm, and that was going gangbusters. And because this was volunteer only, it was kind of interfering with my day job, my revenue stream, so to speak. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I told everyone, sorry, Boston Data Festival is up for grabs. Who wants to do it? And for the first time in my life, I got a flood of people telling me, please don't stop doing the Boston Data Festival. You got to do this. You got to turn this into a conference. So what we decided to do was, okay, let's hire some staff, book a big venue. And John, people know me. I'm not an events person. We had no clue what we're doing, because running a festival that runs on nights and weekends is nothing like a conference. So we booked the Boston Convention Center, which is not as big as the Jarvis Convention Center that you have in New York. Pretty big venue. We charged $50, and I was still running my consulting firm, and I had a few people help me run it. I had one person for looking for speakers, one event manager, and one marketing person. And I get to the venue, and conference centers, a lot of things going on, and I see this line of people around the street, and if you've ever been to that venue, around the block, it's a very, very big block. And I didn't even think it was for ODSC. I thought there was another event going on there. I get in, and Mahmoud was my partner in helping build ODSC at that time. I said, Mahmoud, what's going on? He's like, he said, next time we're not charging $50 a ticket, because I think we charged $50 a ticket. No idea how much this place was going to cost us. And that was back in April 2015. And, since then, we've kind of stayed true to the mission. We've made it very practitioner focused, and we've always kind of stuck to our roots. We never wanted to be like necessarily the biggest conference or even the best in air quotes, because we know that means different things to different people. The name kind of gives it away, right? It's ODSC, or as we call it now, ODSC AI. We can talk about that later. But the Open Data Science Conference, because I was a firm believer in the time, it was the same aha moment as it was with my first meetup, when we started running meetups. It was what I loved about data science was all you need to become a data scientist was take advantage of these open source tools, scikit-learn, pandas, we can list them all, and have a little bit of will and knowledge to learn, and you can call yourself a data scientist. And think about back in 2015, DJ Patil and Tom Davenport already said that data science was the sexiest job of the 21st century. But it wasn't until, I think it was in your neighborhood, Columbia University had the first master's in data science in 2015. There was no data scientists. And even to this day, it's amazing when you talk to people who are data scientists and look at their background, right? I certainly wasn't a data scientist. I came from engineering and coding, and as I told you, but there were history majors, there were economists, they were programmers, they were journalists, and they want to become data scientists. And it's been fascinating to see people come to our conference, attend, volunteer, then speak, and all of a sudden now they're writing books. They're director of AI at Uber and these large companies, Facebook, you name it. Yeah, and it's been great to see the attendees' journey. And I got to say also, I got lucky with a great team. Like everything else, you hire the right people. They're passionate about it. A lot of people, as you know, at ODSC, they've been around a long time. People who leave ODSC, they come back. not talking about you, Alvaro. So yeah, it's been a heck of a journey, to say the least.
Yeah, and yeah, really thankful to you and the team for running this amazing conference. It's if people haven't been to ODSC, highly recommend checking it out. Seamus, where else in the world do you run them? You run them in London, you run them in India.
Yeah, we used to pre-pandemic. We ran them in. My favorite was ODSC Japan, Tokyo. Never been to Tokyo. It's amazing. San Juan in Brazil was another great one. We did them in the UK, Europe, but for the most part, right now we're doing them in is San Francisco in the fall and Boston and the West Coast. And we're actually doing more virtual events now. We just had our AI Builder Summit in January. We did our Agentic AI Summit, which is also virtual in July. We'll be doing another little event back in New York. We might have to have you on that, John, for a couple of days. That'll be hybrid. And we're also getting back into the meetups. So meetup kind of took a long time to come back since COVID. But I got to say they're strongly back. So I was telling you before we started this conversation, I was doing a little speaking tour. I was in Chicago, I was in New York, heading out to Seattle. I was in London, and so many people excited about AI. Some people not so excited, but I got a lot of feedback from that. So yeah, so we're kind of retrenching to the US a little bit, doing more virtual, doing more meetup because there's so much in flux. And the reason we're doing a little more virtual, even though that's not in vogue for conference people anymore, is like it's changing so fast. Like think about that. Why would you do a conference in May and then do an agentic summit in July? And trust me, so much had changed in those 2 months. And because we're practitioner focused, we're not a hand wavy conference. We really thought that was important. And yeah, like I said, great team behind ODSC. But I got to say, throughout the years, we owe a debt of gratitude to instructors like you, speakers like you, who give their time, write books, give training, and then, of course, the open source community, right? So that's what it's all about.
Curious about Trainium 2, the latest AI chip purpose-built by AWS for large-scale training and inference? Each Trainium 2 instance packs a punch, with 20.8 petaflops of compute power, but here's where things get really exciting. The new Trainium 2 Ultra servers combine 64 chips to deliver a massive 83 petaflops in a single node. These Trainium 2 instances deliver 30 to 40% better price performance relative to GPU alternatives. Major players in AI like Anthropic and Databricks, along with innovative startups like Poolside, have teamed up with AWS to power their next-gen AI projects on Trainium 2. Want to see what Trainium 2 can do for your AI workloads? Check out the links in the show notes. All right, now back to the show.
Yeah, so let's talk about how ODSC has transformed over the 10 years that it's been around. One of those things is now literally in the name of the conference changing. And I think that's the first time in the 10-year history, right? So you had in this past Northern Hemisphere spring in Boston, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of ODSC, the Open Data Science Conference. And now, coming up, from when this episode airs in just a couple of weeks, ODSC West in San Francisco, it's called ODSC AI. And that's the first time that the name has changed, right, in 10 years?
First time, yeah. So ODSC, we got tired of calling it the Open Data Science Conference. And not a lie, but about 6 or 7 years ago, I wanted to shift it to AI, because we've been doing a lot of AI over the years. So I wanted to call it the Open AI Conference. But my trademark attorney said, there's this little lab out on the West Coast called OpenAI. There might be a problem with that. So we finally settled on the Open Data Science and AI Conference, and OpenAI for short. But yeah, I think back to those early days with a lot of fondness, because they were heady days. Because when you think back at 2015, what was going on there? It was almost a high point of, it was like everything was so new. Uber, Airbnb, all these cool things were coming out, right? And data science was right along that shift. People were talking about self-driving cars that was going to become a reality. It's finally arrived, and now no one cares. but it was all about, I think, deep learning, machine learning was at its peak, NLP was hot, data science. The tools then were, TensorFlow from Google, fantastic job. But my all-time favorite still is scikit-learn, like the team there, open source platform, and then PyTorch came out. And then later it was MLflow, and it was all about hyperparameter tuning, building models, and fine-tuning your CNNs, your RNNs. And Brian Granger, one of my favorite all-time ODSC keynotes, when he and I'm remiss, I can't remember the name of the other gentleman. What began with N? Nicola? Jupyter Labs, Jupyter Notebook, right? That was so exciting. But that was back in 2015, 2016. But you can kind of see the advancements in data science, machine learning, and AI. And we kind of moved along with it because, big moments I remember in deep learning were, of course, when AlphaGo came out in 2016. That's really when people kind of woke up to the real potential of machine learning and deep learning. And I was actually so what I used to do was secret sauce here. So I guess it's 10 years. I can tell people how I did. I used to go to academic conferences a lot. So ICML, Europe's, was it NIME conference or something like, not NIME, Kitty Nuggets conference, right? And I was in Europe's, or NIPS as it was called, in, I remember it well, Long Beach, California, 2017. And there was a presentation by a bunch of what I thought at the time were kids from Google. Attention is all you need. And I'd been like, NLP was my segue from finance into data science. And that was my focus area. And I kind of got the why context was so important. And then they started calling that an attention mechanism. And when I went to that talk, it was way over my head. I didn't understand it, kind of ignored it, and didn't understand the diagram of the architecture. But that's true for a lot of talks at these conferences I go to. But I think more important for ODSC, and kudos to the cool team, was when BERT came out, right? And everyone started talking about the transformer architecture, how you can transform the learning from one model into another, right? And that's when ODSC started to pick up more about transformer. And then, do you remember back when GPT-2 came out and Sam Altman was like, it's too dangerous to release, and didn't even have access to it. And I think the first access we had was, I believe it was 2020, right before COVID, when GPT-3 came out, but was paid only. And, Midjourney and DALL-E and GANs were all the rage. And then, of course, GPT-3 had its breakout or iPhone moment, right? That was a huge deal. I remember that well. You do too, like November 2022. That was a massive deal.
ChatGPT.
Everybody started talking about AI and they never stopped. And, if you think through that, like the starting journey in 2015 was scikit-learn, PyTorch, AutoML came to the scene, then Jupyter Notebooks. There was a massive shift from your desktop, your workstation, onto the cloud. And then when ChatGPT came out, all of a sudden there was baby AGI, Agent AGI, LangChain, Llama Index, Crew AI, and it shifted less to being about building and fine-tuning models. This whole notion of a pre-trained model was completely new. Like, getting a job as a data scientist used to be all about how well you could hyperparameter tune a model. Then it became all about fine-tuning a pre-trained model and transformer model. So, it's been quite a journey.
And now today, I would welcome your rebuttal to the statement I'm about to make, but I would say that AI engineer. I mean, this it would be hard to rebut, but because AI engineer I know is the fastest growing career in a lot of countries in the world, including in the United States. And that AI engineer job, it's like a subset of a data scientist. It's like data science has become so big that you would typically now specialize in a particular niche. And I think you could potentially categorize AI engineer as a subset under the umbrella of data scientist. And it's interesting that an AI engineer today might not even fine tune models at all. It's about plugging into APIs from proprietary providers like OpenAI that you mentioned there, and kind of stitching workflows together using frameworks like Crew or the OpenAI Agents SDK in order to be able to have more and more agentic, more autonomous capabilities with those proprietary LLM calls. I mean, it could end up being on local infrastructure. You could have an LLM running on your own. It could be custom tuned for some reason, but a lot of the job today is, there's you're not necessarily going to need to do any model training at all.
Absolutely. You might not have to do even any coding, which we can talk
Right.
about that later. Yeah, but 100%. No, I do agree that. I agree with that. It is interesting. We are kind of a data centric organization. The two organizations I mostly work with, and we've been trying to gather job descriptions for over almost 9 years now. And believe it or not, for you data scientists out there, don't worry. It's still I don't know. It's just inertia, but it's still the most popular role out there when you look at data scientists versus ML engineer or AI engineer. But I 100% believe in that. But I believe now not only in job roles and job titles, but also skill sets. Right. I think I've met a lot of data scientists and ML engineers where whatever your organization, but machine learning engineers, especially, they're part of their skill set now has become AI engineering for sure. And same with a data scientist. But AI engineer as a discipline, absolutely. And I think there's a lot more roles going to roll out of that because, look, as I said, that shift from hyperparameter, building models from scratch and working hyperparameters. Look at the machine learning workflow, right? So data sourcing, data orchestration, data profiling, then data transformation, feature selection, feature engineering, model selection, hyperparameter tuning, model evaluation, model deployments, model monitoring, right? How much with AI that role has changed and how much that has shifted to large language models, fine tuning, maybe not tuning, maybe prompt tuning, now program tuning, and then using RAG, using pipelines, orchestrating agents, worrying about evaluation, security, safety, and using AI assisted coding techniques and just evaluating the output from there. So yeah, so I do believe AI engineer is going to be a very hot role, but I'm fairly of the camp that there's going to be a lot of roles going to roll out of that. There's
For
so
sure.
much there.
Yeah,
Like,
just like AI engineer rolled out of data scientist, no doubt, as the tooling, it gets easier and easier to be doing these things. Like you said, you might not even need to code to be choosing what models you're using, deploying them into production environments, increasingly can be done without code. And that opens up, it lowers the barrier to entry. It opens up who can be doing it. It makes it easier to get into, and there's more tools, there's more APIs, there's more MCP, opening up more tools for agents to be able to call. It allows us the ecosystem evolves, and then you have these more and more and more specialized niches along the way. I think that's going to continue and continue.
yeah, I think my favorite niche skill, new job title is if you can be an AI evaluation engineer right now, people will throw money at you. Because think of again that evolution of skills there. Large language models came out. Only very, very few people had experience training those models. And then thanks to LoRa and other techniques, now we could fine tune those. And now newer techniques for like reinforce fine tuning. But think about RAG, how RAG was supposed to be very simple, just get a bunch of embeddings put in a database. But now we've got graph RAG and how complex that stack became. And then we had agents with a brain, with memory, with tool usage. Now you have MCP, as you mentioned. And now we've got multi-agent orchestration. Like, how do you evaluate all that stuff? It's such a hot topic amongst the companies I talk to, that they're really very hot on evaluation. So just like software engineering gave birth to sub roles like DevOps and QA engineers and QA scripting engineers, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there'll be new roles like AI evaluation engineer.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great tip out there. And you mentioned earlier in this episode about how you've been doing this meetup tour across the United States. You mentioned Chicago, New York, and before we started recording, you mentioned to me that when you speak to people, a lot of these people you speak to are concerned about the pace of change due to AI advancements. And so you talked to me about this idea of rewiring professional skills. So, what does this mean? How can people be coping with the pace of change that is coming about because of these rapid AI advancements and proliferations?
Yeah, I got so many of those questions, and I it's almost like, and I've had to do this myself. You have to think about it in two parts. Like one is you have to get comfortable with this with the speed of change, right? And I think most of my career I've been comfortable with that. That's one of the reasons I left very large companies and started my own startup. I want to do things quicker, faster, right? So it's not for everybody, but you do need to get comfortable with that speed of change. And there is actually an advantage there as well because it's been proven um, throughout time, and you've seen this over decades and centuries, that the pace of change always outruns most people's ability to absorb it, right? And that, of course, leads to a lot of angst, but also leads to opportunity. If you are one of the people who learn how to deal with that, right? And what that means is you have to kind of be um, comfortable with this continuous need to rewire. And I think that's what people have to understand, that the 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 speed itself is the new challenge, right? And this is something I've been kind of studying a lot. Like there was a study, I might send it to you for the show notes, but I did read this study in AI exposed industries. And I'm not just talking about data science now, but AI exposed industries or jobs rather. The skills turnover something like 30 something percent. So more or less, I don't know if it's compounded or not, but more or less every 3 years. I don't quite believe it, but even at low case, the skills requirements turn over, and you can kind of see that. Like people now have to learn prompt engineering, vibe coding, and you know that's and that's and that pace of change, it leaves a lot of gaps, right? Your company may be moving fast, you're moving slower. You're moving fast. The company's moving slow, or the industry and stuff like that. And then I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, John, of course, and you can see as well that compute is doubling every 6 months, right? And that's having a big problem. And so getting comfortable with the pace of change is important because you know I started listening to this show last year about the history of the universe. It's my AI detox program. Great show, History of the Universe. And there was one
What's
episode
it called? The
there,
History of the Universe is the name
History
of
of
the
the
show.
Universe. It's on YouTube. History of the Universe. It's my AI detox. It's about astrophysics and astronomy and all that kind of stuff. But believe it or not, until about 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't know the universe was expanding. Like, so I always think of AI skills like the universe. They never stop expanding. And just like the universe, we don't know what it's expanding into, right? You know, if the universe is a bubble or there's multi-bubbles and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going off on a tangent here. But anyway,
No, that
yeah,
was a good analogy. I like that.
yeah. So
I hope we turn what you just said into one of our animated shorts for this episode,
yeah.
because that's a great visual. This idea of it, that's with the universe, just like the universe expands, skills are expanding. The quantity of them. Like we talked about earlier. Data science branching off into AI engineer and lots of other more specific paths, and now AI engineer will branch itself into lots of other sub careers. So yeah, I think you've nailed it with that analogy. Anyway, I've taken you off track now.
yeah. And look, I've been in the industry 3 decades in tech, right? Fintech, whatever. Um, Skills never go away. There's just more of them, right? And that's why it just amazes me when people get so concerned. Well, this is no longer being needed. Like they still need COBOL programmers. Well, but anyway, back to the rewiring. Yeah. So when I talk to people about rewiring, they're like, okay, well, what does that mean in practice? And yeah, it's cert- such an important thing because I kind of take, an obvious, very optimistic, almost, I would say, hardcore view on that. Because I really think, and I'm doing this myself for myself, I think, AI is moving from, you were moving away, because back in 2015, we were using data science, machine learning, and even AI as a tool, right? It's moving away from AI being a tool to AI as being a collaborative partner, right? And I do think those collaboration skills you build now will help you over the next decade, right? Because that kind of helps deal with that. Can I build something now that can future proof? So I say, you want to wait or you want to build, right? That's not very, that's kind of important, because when we look at AI, it's quite clear now, it's either going to be, AI is either going to augment or automate, right? And both of those present opportunity. So I really think that when I talk to people about rewiring their skills, first and foremost, stop worrying about your skills being replaced and start thinking big picture now, what's possible with AI. I remember you said this in one of your podcasts. You said something like, with AI, you can do work now that was previously impossible. And that's absolutely true. I'm doing stuff that I would never have done without AI before. Like, and forget about the role of a data scientist or a machine learning engineer for a second. I talked to a lot of startups in my other role, and also I saw it at ODSC. All of a sudden, we had these people from sales and marketing showing up, and they're all talking about agents. They want to learn about agents. If you think back, maybe a startup yourself, when sales was a decade ago, right? In sales, there was you basically had an account manager and account executive. Now in sales, you have a lead gen specialist, you have an SDR, you have account executive, an account manager, different roles, by the way. You have a sales engineer, customer success person, a revenue officer. If you take AI, a lot of those roles can be rolled up, and AI can either augment or automate those. And then think about that salesperson. Let's say you were just doing SDR, or you were just doing account management, or you're just doing sales engineering. You can now do a whole lot more, but you're going to have to rewire your skills because of AI, right? And you know that's kind of, and again, I've been studying this a lot, and the more questions I get about it, the more it's kind of a continuous loop. The more I kind of study it, and you know, um, as you know, we have our own podcast, which we need to have you on or back on, and we had um, was it Robert Brennan? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, but he's the CEO of Open Hands, which was an open source version of Open Devon, which allows you to automate your work. And I asked him the question, like, shouldn't people be worried about this replacing their jobs? He's like, look, Seamus, most work today is drudge work. And I really started to research that. He's right. Like, if you think about the average person in an office, they're looking at emails, they're doing admin. It's mostly drudge work, and there's this whole productivity paradox and automation paradox. Like, even though we got productivity with automation, problem with the automation paradox is automation still needs oversight. It still needs judgment. So yeah, I think the new roles are going to be, as I said before, you rewire your skills, going back to data science and AI, less about building models from scratch, more about designing workflows, managing supervision, evaluation, and less to be builders and more orchestrators, or less to be building from scratch and more orchestration.
Gen AI and classic machine learning are great at solving a lot of problems, but they are not built for complex decision problems. Even a slew of agents can't deal with all the possibilities when there are trillions or trillions of possibilities. Mathematical optimization, in contrast, is the perfect complement to these skills for decision-making at scale. To get you going, Gurobi has hands-on online trainings made just for data scientists. The latest installment of optimization for data scientists, called Opti 301, is just around the corner. To catch up on this series, register for the upcoming training, and to check out other resources like case studies optimization, head to gurobi.com/learn. That's GUROBI.com/learn.
I like that. And that does indeed, you're going to love Sadie St. Lawrence's first book when it comes out. It's got AI orchestration right there in the
Oh
title.
wow!
Yeah,
Sadie
exactly.
she always has great content.
She does. I don't know how she does it all. She's unbelievable. Um, so that's great. I love all the perspective that you provided on what we can be doing as practitioners in terms of rewiring our skill sets and taking it, making use of this AI moment, this automation, augmentation moment that AI is providing, and using that to make ourselves more valuable, get rid of some of the drudgery of the work that we might be doing. What about the other side of the coin, hiring? So I
Ooh,
think I think there's probably been a shift a bit recently from degree-based hiring more to capability-based hiring in AI-related roles. Do you want to make some input on that, and then just tell us, yeah, what you're seeing from a hiring manager's perspective? What should they be doing in this moment to make the most of it?
yeah, I think, yeah, I want to choose my words carefully here because look, going back to the founding of ODSC, right? As I said at the very start, I always believe that anyone could be a data scientist, right? With the tools, the code, the will. As I said before, even to this day, we look at the profiles of people showing up to conferences. I go to other conferences and I ask, like, what's your background in? I have people on my show. I ask them, how do you get started in data science? You know how many people tell me they started as a data scientist or an AI engineer? Very, very few, right? Or a AI PhD in data science or something like that. So I've always believed in the uh, the skills based hiring right out of the bat, and you've also seen a shift, and this predates large language models and the AI moment, if we can call it that. Like I remember a couple of years ago, I couldn't find my degree from Northeastern when I went for my job at Fidelity. I was freaking out, and I finally had to go and get it. And I was very nervous there, but I was happy to see that Fidelity finally stopped requiring. I think it was a good few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, stopped requiring a degree, and IBM and Google and even Meta, I think, have gone to do that. So
Were you saying? Are you saying in that story there that you lost your diploma and you had to go? So you had to like reorder a diploma, and then you had to like bring the diploma to your interview.
no, no, no. So even funnier. So just a little background. I from Ireland originally. Um, wanted to do electric engineering and wanted to work on better computers. Ireland at the time didn't have very good ones, so went to Northeastern here in Boston, very good engineering school. And I went there, and my last class was in April. And back then, in the early '90s, you didn't get a year visa to work around. So I actually, because I was pretty much broke after school, I went back to London to work in London. Um, and I never went to my graduation in Northeastern, so I never actually got my diploma, and they were going to mail it to you. So I'm in London. I'm working away. I'm applying for grad school, and lo and behold, I got a green card in the mail. I won't bore you with the details. I came back here, and then someone reached out to me from Fidelity and like, "Hey, do you want to come work here?" I passed the interview process and everything. And it's like, and then right before I was supposed to start my job, they're like, "Oh yeah, one small thing. You said you had a degree. We need to see that degree." And that was back in the days before you could look it up. And I was like, "What? Degree? Yeah, I got a degree. Can't you just call Northeastern?" I'm like, "No, they won't let us into their records." So I had to go down to Northeastern. I will be honest, I had a little bill outstanding, a couple of grand I had to pay as well. Maybe you should edit that out.
No, that's not
So
coming
anyway,
up. That's so funny.
am I going red, John? Am I blushing?
Wow, I was wondering if you were sunburnt before, and now definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, so back on track to the credentials. And like you, I learned so much from my podcast as well, and from speakers at ODSC, instructors like yourself. Like we had Daniel Rock and Sam Manning on, and they did some great papers about like when people talk about AI exposed jobs. I take that with a little bit of a grain of salt because I kind of look at the jobs and they broke down the tasks and see what tasks are very repeatable. But and a lot of experts talk about this credential collapse, saying that AI exposed or AI augmented jobs. If you're good at AI, you no longer need credentials. And look, the way I look at it is because actually, in my work for a VC firm, I'm at
Yeah, let's
degree.
talk about that really quickly, just so that people have the context. Because
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
in addition to ODSC, all the work you do with the Open Data Science Conference, you're the founder of Cortical Ventures. Is that right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Okay.
They found me. I was on the
Ah,
founding team, I guess I would say. But I would say Jeremy Arshin from Data Robot fame and Igor Taber, he was at Intel and their startup team there. Two pretty big deals. When they were thinking of starting a VC firm, they reached out to me. So I wouldn't say I'm a founder per se because I'm a venture partner, which is a fancy way of saying you're part time. So I do help find deals. So if you got a startup ID there, shameless self plug, send me your deck. Would love to see it. Connect me on LinkedIn. But what really got me involved is they promised me this role of head of AI. So I have a small AI team there. So this allows me to build out AI. So I've been drinking the Kool-Aid, eating the dog food. So we started about almost 4 years ago. And we said when we started Cortical Ventures, we will use AI to find the next generation of and support the next generation of founders. So we've been using tools everywhere from kind of like using some of the signals I used to use in the hedge fund world. Signals, then we were using agents. Now we're using agentic workflows. But even in Cortical, like when we look at startups, look at founders, degrees still matter. But what's shifted now, it's like it's one signal only, right? You know what I mean? And you asked about employers, what are they looking for? But even on the people looking for job side, what they should be looking at is like they want to see your skills, but they also want to see proof, right? And John, you and I have been preaching this for years. What's on your GitHub? What's on your your LinkedIn? Are you posting about stuff? If you learn something, write a blog about it. Are you speaking at a meetup? Are you volunteering at events? So you want to build a project portfolio and show proof of skills. And to hiring managers who are new to this, yeah, degrees still matter, I think. But look for people, what they're doing in the community, how they're contributing, where they're contributing. Look for portfolios, um, and look for excitement. Look for people who are eager to learn, who are coachable, flexible, because that's what it is. Because when the whole industry is in flux, when you got to rewire your skills, you have to maintain flexibility and you got to be very coachable, right? And look at this crazy talent war that's going on between OpenAI and Meta, right? $100 million bonuses and offers. And yeah, and one thing as well, I say to people, like, going back to the speed of change, just get used to the fact that AI roles and the required skills will always emerge much faster than traditional degree programs. And I think this recognition of skills is long overdue. And to be quite blunt, I think universities are doing graduates a disservice in how they train computer science and data science degrees at the moment. So yeah.
yeah. I was recently reading that. So Noam Brown, who's now a pretty well-known researcher at OpenAI, and he was on this podcast some years ago. Noam wrote recently on LinkedIn about how a lot of university AI programs, introduction to AI, it has nothing to do with the kinds of skills. It has nothing to do with large language models, transformers. It's about kind of decades old ideas around, hill climbing strategies, things that are completely out of date, but that, you know, the curriculum moves so much slower than universities can adapt. And yeah, I mean, I don't have my own kids yet, and so it'll be a while before the kids that I do have are thinking about going to college. But I could easily imagine, even if I had kids of college going age today, I'd be saying, think about whether all that investment, especially in the US, it's so expensive in a lot of cases. A lot of the rest of the world, it isn't. There's all kinds of social things that I think are great about university, but in terms of employable skill set, it isn't necessarily the best use of capital.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I really agree there because yeah, I don't want to be hypocritical. My son is actually going to college, and I think it's a great experience. And I understand. I know why universities are in a bind, right? You got to teach the fundamentals. You can't be teaching the latest hottest thing, and there's another late hottest thing. So you have to teach the foundations. Like when I was doing computer science, I learned about databases and operating systems, and some of that stuff is still true. But But look, the way the universities are teaching it right now, when ChatGPT came out, they banned it. Instead of trying to control it and have people help them learn with it, they banned it. As you know, I also teach a boot camp. We have a boot camp with ODSC to try and get people ready for the fire hose of learning they're going to experience at ODSC West. So we run a boot camp every year or before every conference. And I've moved towards incorporating AI into my learning and just telling them. We did a podcast with Natalia from MIT Media Lab here. Natalia, I won't say her last name because of the butcher, but she wrote the viral paper. She was one of the co-authors of Your Brain and ChatGPT. So if you're using ChatGPT all the time, using LLMs to do your work, you're going to lose your skill set, right? Part of rewiring your skill set is not to be overusing ChatGPT, but universities need to get on board with letting students use AI tools, be comfortable with them because look, it's a complete disservice. I'm sure you've read the report where computer science graduates' employment rate is way up, right? More so than the norm. I think it's something like 7 or 8% versus the other one is 3 or 4%.
Computer science grads, unemployment rates are way up.
Unemployment rates, yeah, are way up. Yeah. Now, I read that report a month ago, but like everything, people are sticking an AI label on and blaming AI for it. I think that may have a lot to do with because look, most of the computer science hiring in the US is big tech hiring. So it all depends on what Apple, Meta, Google, and a few others I'm forgetting are hiring, right? So I think it's a bit to do with that because there's other trends that support that. So everyone's saying that they're blaming the fact that they're not trained in AI for their unemployment rate, and also the fact that these folks don't have AI skills. They have skills that are easily replaceable with AI, like the junior skills are easily replaced with AI. And I think universities need to pay attention to that because, I'm mid-level career now, mid-level management, I suppose. So I'm not trying to diss anyone and scare anybody. But if I was at a company, I would much rather hire a young junior computer science graduate who was excited about AI, ready to learn, constantly rewire their skills, than someone's like, yeah, vibe coding is just a trend. It'll go away. I don't need to learn this stuff, or I'll use it a little bit. So I think there's a lot of work universities need to do there, and I think they'll catch up. I think they will cop on. I know Northeastern here is doing a good job on that. BU, I talked to some folks there, BC. So universities know this. They're just trying to figure it out. But yeah, so I think the shift to skills-based hiring is real, and I think it's real.
Data scientists, it's time to talk about your tech. With Windows 10 support coming to an end, now is the perfect moment to rethink your setup. Enter Dell AI PCs powered by Intel Core Ultra processors. These devices are built for the demands of modern data science, delivering faster performance, smoother multitasking, and the power to handle even the most complex workflows. Whether you're training machine learning models or analyzing massive datasets, these PCs are designed to keep you ahead of the curve. Don't let outdated tech slow you down. Visit Dell.com/shoppcs to explore how you can upgrade your device and elevate your work. That's Dell.com/SHOPPCS.
All right, so we've talked now a lot about individual skills. What about teams? So what do you see, in your role as, what's the title there again? Venture partner at Cortical Ventures at the VC firm. What do you see in successful AI startups? How do they get their team skill set right?
Yeah. I didn't mention before, but I'm really grateful for Jeremy and Igor and Mike, and give me a window into this world. And it's a fascinating world, quite a fascinating world. And it's a very privileged position because I'm definitely not on all of the calls because of my other work and my other roles. But I do have a lot of conversations with some extremely bright, fascinating people building some amazing things. And I wish Cortical could have funded them all, but the power law in VC is very strong. So don't hold me to that. not all my decision. So that caveat. Yeah. So there's this whole, come on, everything starts in the valley and kind of spreads out, right? There's this whole, let me roll back here. Because startups are an interesting beast for people who have never been involved in them, but they're like time machines, right? So an AI startup is like a time machine. An AI startup is like a time machine. The skills that they're betting on today, that often becomes the industry standard tomorrow, right? And we've seen this time and time again. You talked about, we just talked about skills based. I've never met a startup. They don't look at static resumes. They always want to hire people who are flexible, who can rewire their skills almost in real time. Flexible, can have multiple roles, and they're coachable, right? And that's been around for a while. And now because of AI, the new thing they're doing is this concept of tiny teams, right? And tiny teams is a fascinating concept, right? And the idea here is you build a small, flexible, highly capable team and you want to emphasize this hybrid skill set and this deep collaboration. And the reason you can do that is AI is either going to augment or automate a lot of the routine, not only the routine tasks, but a lot of the expert tasks, right? So, you do a startup, you used to have to hire a legal counsel to do all your whatever. Now you just use ChatGPT or a legal platform. You can use AI assisted coding. You can build your MVP, the front end demo you used to go and bring to VCs. You can literally build that in a day thanks to Replit and Lovable and all that stuff. So what you end up seeing is founders prioritize quality hires over quality hires with domain expertise, hybrid roles, and another thing they're doing, which I don't think is healthy, is they're really focusing on revenue per employee. Not sure if it's relevant to this discussion, but you see startups like I think I told you earlier. I think the number's right. Lovable, the AI assisted coding platform, 10 million in revenue in 2 months with about 15 employees. And I think a better one is not as impressive, but Cursor. No, wait. Cursor went to 100 million with 45 people. I don't know what the timeline was, but 100 million in revenue. And all it was okay, I shouldn't be dismissive, but it's basically a wrapper around an LLM, right? But to their credit, they've done some amazing work training that. So the key thing, what you see in startups here that's relevant to our conversation is they really work a lot to build out the AI tooling. It's kind of like when I said we started Cortical. That's why I was brought on to Cortical for was, can we use AI to build an AI VC firm? So, and this is why I pay so much attention to this, because this is what we're trying to do in the team at Cortical, like using AI tooling that augments or automates away and many of those drudge tasks we talked about, and before really required a lot of effort. And I do think startups, as I mentioned before, are a kind of a window into the future of work. And so very, very interesting. I'm not. Did that kind of answer your question? Tiny team.
It did, Seamus. Yeah, tiny teams.
Sorry,
yeah.
Sometimes I speak for so long, I kind of lose the start.
You have a unique way of speaking. You did bring it back. You have brought it back on every question, but you have such extensive knowledge, and we have this journey hopping with you, away from my question and then back.
My apologies.
No, it's all
I should be a politician.
And so going beyond, so we've talked a lot in this episode about the skills and how they've changed over the past 10 years. So, going back to the beginning of the episode, we talked about the Open Data Science Conference, how you founded it. And we kind of followed this journey of how the data science and then AI skill set changed over those 10 years. We've now spent a lot of the episode, the past half hour or so, talking about rewiring professional skills, the kinds of things that people should be looking for when hiring, the kinds of teams that people should be putting together by combining all these skills together. And then, most recently, how to make a successful AI startup, the kinds of people that are employed in those organizations, the kinds of skill sets that are involved. And so now I want to take a look to the future. And so there's a lot of concern amongst developers themselves, as anybody who's writing code, anybody in data science, anybody working on AI, that AI itself could put us all out of a job, that artificial general intelligence or artificial super intelligence could make a lot of human work obsolete. And I think there's maybe, when people think about that as a concern, things that involve physical manipulation of the world, I think people might feel like that's a little bit safer for a little bit longer, because robotics is hard and it takes time to be able to, physically manipulate the real world. So all kinds of things like, physical therapist, massage therapist, construction work. There's all these kinds of jobs that, seem relatively safe because they involve physical manipulation of the world. But if you're in a purely cognitive kind of role, which I think up until the past few years, it kind of felt like that's where you were safer. Really go to university, get that graduate degree, really develop your specialization, because the machines, they're good at the physical stuff. They're getting better at the physical stuff. We've got robots in factories, but cognitive work, that's safe. And now all of a sudden, since the Chat GPT moment that we talked about earlier in this episode, you're like, wow, no, machines are taking, carving out more and more and more of a broader cut out of the possible cognitive tasks that we can do, doing it at a superhuman capability. And yeah, how much does that concern you? How does that, how fearful are you of, the cognitive ability of machines? And yeah, how can people, is there any way that we can prepare as individuals or organizations for that kind of future?
Yeah, um, again, through my role at Cortical and most definitely my role at ODSC, and then for going to these meetups and talking to people, I do think about this to the best of my ability. So there's a lot of ink being spilled on this, a lot of smart people talking about this, but also I got to say a lot of nonsense as well. And maybe I'm speaking nonsense as well, so I don't mean to be speak ill of anybody. But when I do go to meetups and conferences, and people are generally concerned, it makes me a little bit pissed off, to say the least, because there's so much angst out there and a lot of like clickbait headlines. So part of my role, like your role, is to educate people in data science, and this is why people should listen to this podcast, right? So yeah, preparing for the future, I try and figure that out myself, because how do you deal with anxiety? How do you deal with worry? You try, like most things, it's a big problem. You break it down into smaller problems, right? And I do believe, without having to repeat myself in the stuff we already talked about, I do believe there is a new kind of skills hierarchy out there. Whether you're in an AI data science role or a non-technical role, I do think that's important. And I don't know. I'm trying to flesh this out in my head, because people ask me this all the time, and I want to have a better answer. But I do think number one, from the teaching I've done myself, is think about the first step is, or in the hierarchy or whatever that is. Look, at this stage, ChatGPT, basic prompting, using Gen AI, it's all table stakes, right? That's the price of entry. Everyone should be doing that. And with each of these tiers, you can kind of look at a base tier, and then how do you do more of an expert tier. And so for those who's in the role, we should think of the expert tier as well. So beyond doing that, and like this is why I loved listening to your podcast with Krohn, the former host of the Super Data Science podcast. When he explained LLMs to me, I finally got it. And then I was finally able to teach other people. I forget what podcast episode that was, but that was one of my...
I think, yeah, so you're talking about the Transformers episode that he did.
Yes. Fantastic.
Yeah, you keep talking. I'll find the episode number. That is one of our most
Fantastic
popular
topic.
episodes of all time.
But yeah, so in that tier one, table stakes are basic prompting, stuff like that. Becoming more expert will be understanding LLM's limitations, understanding the architecture, hallucination bias, understanding, garbage in, garbage out, data-centric AI, data hygiene, cloud basics, and of course, AI awareness. And then the next step up from that, if you want to be an engineer and stuff like that and future proof, it's all about keeping current with the tools that are out there, like keeping current with what's going on with OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, Google, building those systems, prompt engineering. And take, for example, prompt engineering. If that's the second level, I actually teach a class on that as well. But now we've got prompt programming, which is and prompt templates, which is a part of that as well. And that next tier is about learning to customize model workflows and definitely starting to work with domains and of course efficient engineering. So that's very important. But like Sadie, I think the next tier after that, because I'm kind of going in levels here, the next tier after that is definitely orchestration. So I can't wait to read her book because it's always been over decades, like new skills, new tools. It's always about, as you said at the very start, connecting those tools, wrapping them, integrating them into product workflow, putting them into production, and then managing latency and cost. You know that the paradox we talked about earlier, the not the productivity one, but anyway, I'll come back to it. But so when new things come out, I think it's called the automation paradox. Whenever something is automated, it's never, in the ether. There still has to be oversight and judgment applied to that, right? So orchestration, integration is very important. And then the expert level of that is, these multi-agent systems, tool chains, pipelining, and then continuous learning. And then after that, it comes into management. And I'm a big believer in this, you really need to focus on those human-centered skills, right? Like when you're not stuck coding all day or AI is augmenting or automation a lot of your work, that communication, that collaboration, being adaptable, domain knowledge, whereas fintech, healthcare, finance, startups, health, law becomes so important. And then, building leadership around that. What's your AI strategy? Like what's your AI strategy? Understanding ethical judgment, what to do there, safety, auditing, compliance. I know a lot of people now going for AI risk compliance certificates, which I think is quite smart. And then I think the last thing to really future-proof is you got to learn to learn. You got to stay very curious about this stuff. Stay in the slipstream. You got to get comfortable navigating ambiguity. And I think a big part of that, if you want to become expert at, is developing foresight is really important in this field now. Anticipating what AI will enable, what are the next requirements going to be, system thinking, creativity, and understanding those responsibilities. Because to be honest, it's not that hard. That's what I've been doing most of my career. That's why I kept on shifting. That's why I got into data science earlier, and that's why I got into AI early. That's kind of why I got into VC, because I want to kind of have a window into what's next. And I got to say as well, even when I started ODSC and they meet us back in 2013, then ODSC in 2015, it's all about building your brand. Long gone are the days when you depend on one employer. John, I got to say, you were the master of building a brand, right? People can take a lesson out of your book. Build your own brand, do your work, write, blog, post, learn, be curious. Skills right now they've got a shelf life or a half life of much less than what they were. Like, I spent decades honing my coding skills, and it's like loss aversion, right? You don't want to let go of those skills, but you gotta sunset some skills. And now I focus on being the best prompt engineer I can be, and less about coding. And when I teach my machine learning class and my coding class, I teach them the fundamentals of it, but I'm like, okay, now it's going to be about how to prompt this. So yeah, you got to sunset because there's only so much time in the day, so you got to sunset some skills, and you have to be comfortable with learning new skills continuously.
Nice. Well, that's a great message to finish off on here, Seamus. Before I let you go, though, I need a book recommendation from you, as you know.
Yes, I do because I listen to your podcast. So I'm going to do a couple of book recommendations. Is that allowed?
I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Or you can always edit out the second one. But
No,
one-
you can have two.
the one I've been preaching to the choir when I talk to people is like most of my answers is going to be a long one. I'm going to try and keep it short. But like most of my answers, so think about the models when they first came out. There was one type of model. And then reasoning models when they came out last year were a very big deal. And then instant models like, system one thinking, system two thinking. Well, a book I read about many years ago, it was very influential to me how I started to think about data science and then machine learning and then AI. It's never let me down. And that's Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. Have you ever read it?
I knew it. Yeah, I love Thinking Fast and Slow. I've talked about it on the show a lot, and usually in the exact same context that you just brought it up, which is this idea of system one thinking being your fully automatic, fast thinking, and that is like what GPT 3.5 was like, or GPT 4, where you get it's like stream of consciousness just being spit out in real time, like the words coming out of my mouth right now, the tokens that I'm spewing. Whereas thinking slow is, careful, logical thought, breaking things down step by step, maybe getting out a pencil, a whiteboard marker. And that's what we now see with reasoning models.
Yeah, another one, because I interviewed him for my, he was a guest on our show. And that was, you think I'd be able to pronounce the name correctly, Arvind Narayanan, and he wrote the book AI Snake Oil. So a good book to read, and not necessarily a skeptic around AGI and stuff like that. And then you asked me about AGI, and I think I never answered it, but I don't know. I think we will get to AI eventually, but not in the timelines people are talking about. And calling what we have today AGI is like calling a skateboard a self-driving car because it has wheels. I think I heard that somewhere. Kind of funny. So AI Snake Oil is a good book. And then for my AI detox, as I said, History of the Universe, great series. And then one of my favorite all-time books is now a Netflix series, but The Three Body Problem, and then I think what was it, the Dark Forest, and I forget the name of the third in the trilogy, but there's my recommendations.
Yeah, Third Body Problem. That's got to be one. I've got to read that. I've been looking for a good novel to pick up, and lots of people have recommended that.
You got to
It's
read
time. Yeah. And then AI Snake Oil, you mentioned that at ODSC East to me in person. He's someone I've got to get on the show. I just haven't had space, but I'd love to get him on.
Arvind's great.
And then I did look up while you were speaking that episode, that introduction to LLMs and Transformers episode that we did with Kira Laramenko. How could I forget? It's episode 747.
That's right, 747.
Yeah, exactly. It's flying. All right, Seamus, for people who want to get more of your brilliant thoughts, obviously they can make their way to ODSC West at the end of, at the end of October, basically every year, Halloween time. This year it is the exact dates. You must have them on hand.
28th to 30th.
28th to 30th. There you go.
Brain. Yeah.
And so catch you at ODSC West, or if you're on the East Coast, ODSC East in the spring. I'll probably see you there at either of these conferences.
I definitely want to see you there, John. And yeah, for sure.
Beyond the conferences, where else should people catch you? How can people follow you after the episode, Seamus?
Yeah, if they, I love this podcast, but if they want to listen to another, if they got room, our podcast is where I kind of speak my mind, and they're definitely not brilliant thoughts, as you well know, listener, from listening to me for the last however many minutes it was. But I do my best. I do post on LinkedIn. But please come meet me at a meetup near you, or come to ODSC West and come to ODSC East. I don't have all the answers, but I love hearing the questions.
Nice. Love it, Seamus. Such a treat to have you on the show. My apologies that it took so long to get you on, and hopefully it won't be too long before you're back. But the twist is going to be that in 2 years when you're back, AGI is going to be hosting my show. You're still welcome to be a guest.
I don't believe it. I'll make a bet on that.
That's satire.
I'll put money on that. Yeah. I did make a few bets on that already with people. But John, look, this has been an amazing experience, first of all. Super Data Science is, I always tell people, this is the podcast people have to listen to. I've learned so much from it over the years. And I've learned so much from your talks. The talk you gave at Ed Donner at ODSC West, it's on YouTube. Love that. And so many people have said to me that have listened to it on YouTube and loved it. And again, to people like yourself who come to ODSC, our instructors, we owe you a debt of gratitude and can't thank you enough. And I should not be on this podcast because I love all the guests you have. So I'd much rather hear from all the other brilliant people you keep on having on there.
And thanks for mentioning that Agentic AI Engineering YouTube video that Ed Donner and I did. That's recorded at the Open Data Science Conference. And for people out there who have listened to that or have watched that YouTube video, it's this very Seamus on this podcast today that introduces me and kicks off that video. So thanks for the enthusiasm there, Seamus. And catch you at ODSC soon.
Catch you at ODSC, John. We'll see you there.
So happy to finally have had Sheamus McGovern on the show. In today's episode, he covered the genesis story of my favorite data science conference, ODSC, which he founded and is now in its 10th year, how skill sets in our industry have shifted over that decade, how AI engineer roles have emerged as the fastest growing career, focusing more on workflow design and API integration than building models from scratch, how Sheamus recommends rewiring skills as the pace of technological change outstrips people's ability to absorb it, the tiny teams phenomenon in AI startups, and practical strategies for future-proofing careers through continuous learning, building personal brands, and developing orchestration skills over pure technical coding. As always, you can get all those show notes, including the transcript for this episode, the video recording, any materials mentioned on the show, the URLs for Sheamus's social media profiles, as well as my own at superdatascience.com/933. Thanks, of course, to everyone on the Super Data Science podcast team, our podcast manager, Sonia Brevich, media editor, Mario Pombo, partnerships manager, Natalie Jaisky, our researcher, Serge Massis, writer, Dr. Zara Karche, and our founder, Kirill Eremenko. Thanks to that whole team for producing another awesome episode for us today, for enabling that super team to create this free podcast for you. We are so grateful to our sponsors. They literally keep this show going. And then you can help us out by checking out our sponsors' links, which are in the show notes. And if you're ever interested in sponsoring an episode yourself, you can find out how at johnkrohn.com/podcast. Otherwise, share, review, subscribe, edit videos into shorts to your heart's content. But most importantly, just keep on tuning in. I'm so grateful to have you listening, and I hope I can continue to make episodes you love for years and years to come. Until next time, keep on rocking it out there, and I'm looking forward to enjoying another round of the Super Data Science podcast with you very soon.